we are starting our next panel now, and this is going to be based around character design. And we have three really wonderful artists, so help me welcome to the stage. We have Mumbot, we have Tara McPherson, and we have Abao joining us. Something on air. All right. Well, welcome. How wonderful to have you guys all on stage here with us. Thank you. So again, Mumbot here, Tara McPherson, and Abao. And we have Abao as translator as well, so we will be working together to make that work. So we're here to talk about character design. And maybe we can start, we'll just go down the line here. Mumbot, you can start, and we can talk a little bit about maybe some of the characters that you've created, and we can talk about that. Any characters that recently, or any of the characters you've designed that you'd like to tell.
Yeah, hi everybody, I'm Mumbot. Show you a quick intro?
Yeah, sure, let's do a little introduction.
Like Mumbot and an artist and a toy designer, and you can see my booth right over there if you want to come by. But I have a range of original characters. My main characters are Ghostless the Ghost, and a lot of nature spirits, Mossy the Moss Spirit, Shumi the Mushroom Spirit. Yeah, I have a bunch, as you can see. And recently had a successfully funded Kickstarter for the first one. Yep.
Wonderful. And that was the role of your first floor.
Yeah. Yes. Which I have the factory photo there if anyone wants to check it out.
Yes. Congratulations on it. All right, Tara.
Testing. That sounds better.
Yeah.
Okay. My very first character that I ever made was called Base Kitty Hawk. And it was one of those college assignments where they say the name of your first cat and the street you grew up on. And I was like, okay, Ace Kitty Hawk. And then I had to design my first character. And I made this kind of like cute and evil bear character, kind of maybe he's a different creature underneath the costume, maybe I don't know. And then the second one I made, he needs a friend, and so he's Ion, the bunny, and they kind of go on space adventures. And since then, I've done tons more. Those were the first ones, and kind of worked on creating a whole world of characters and all those.
Excellent, thank you. And Abao, tell us about some of your characters that you've created.
Hello everyone, I'm Abao. Sorry, I need to try this again.
We love it. That's perfect. Yes, thank you.
我的很多角色是跟一些大自然里面的生物会有一个融合。他们很多，比如我的第一个角色兔子，然后还有Spider Baby 弟弟，这个蜘蛛，就是他就是一个小男孩和一个昆虫的一个人物，小男孩和一个甲虫的一样。So many of my characters are inspired by the nature, such as a rabbit, a bunny, and a spider boy, which is like a combination of a baby boy and a spider. 包括我的第三个角色 Spider Girl Mammy， 她就是一个小女孩和蜘蛛的融合。就是我的很多角色，她的世界观是在一个比较末世的一个时候，就是可能地球上有一些辐射的状况，所以很多人类和动物它会发生一种融合的情况，所以它是我大部分创作的一个灵感来源。Same as my third character I created, which is a combination of a girl and a spider. A lot of my characters and they're affected by radiation. That's why they're a combination of animals and human.
Excellent. That was going to be kind of my next point, so maybe we can continue a little bit further down that. So after you create a character, kind of the natural progression is to create a world they exist in, and maybe come up with how they existed or interacted. And so you were saying a bit about that. They exist in a post-apocalyptic kind of music world where they've transformed a bit. Is that what you were saying? Okay, good. Yeah. So tell us a bit about that world and what happens and goes on, maybe, or how you envision that world.
想象的这个后末世的世界，它其实是虽然大家都是在一个辐射里面，但是其实这个自然生态已经形成了另外的一种和谐。所以我创造的这些角色，他们也是很开心的生活在这样的一个世界里面。所以大家可以看到我的很多角色，它都是一个微笑的，或者有带一点点狡猾的坏笑这样的一个形象。
So even though it's an apocalyptic world, but there's some sort of harmony. That's why my characters are always smiling or they're smirky, because it's a very harmonized world.
Wonderful, that's great. And Tara, you were talking about Ace and Ion, which from the very beginning you said they're the first characters you created. I've kind of looked at them like your R2-D2 and C-3PO. They've kind of seen their way through each of the worlds you created, whether it was rock posters, your paintings, your designer toys. Ace and Ion have kind of always been amongst it, the way C-3PO and R2-D2 made their way through all the Star Wars. I kind of see the similarity to that. Tell us a little bit about each of the worlds they've gone through and the iterations that they've taken on.
Yeah, like in that regard, we're kind of like bumbling helpers, like not quite sophisticated enough to really be poignant, but they're adventuresome and they have a good time, And I think, what Abao said also, like these worlds where it's fucked up, but it's funny, and so it is akin to our world and humanity, the nature of humans. The evil, good, these dichotomies. Like sweet, creepy, and having that tension and play with any sort of characters kind of gives them that depth and relatability, and you love them and you can love the dark side of them as well.
Excellent, thank you. And Mumbot, there's of course I can see this world building that you've created as well, and they exist together. I mean, often in the forest, but maybe they made into outer space. So let's talk about that.
Yeah. I can. Hello, I'm sorry. I can relate to
Maybe you hold it straight.
straight. I'm not. It's the sorry. Thank you. I can relate to some of the things Tara and Al were saying about just incorporating different things into the characters, like how it might relate also to create ideal things in real life, but it's not an fantasy way, and whimsical, like that's easier, like whimsical and funny, and try to create hope. That's kind of what I'm doing with it. Also, like the toys, they help for me to like connect with people. And the art and the toys, the physical objects, it's like through the storytelling and the character design itself is a way to connect and communicate with others. But yeah, one of the things Sean mentioned was like, the settings where they exist. So like the forest and mushrooms and moss are some of my favorite things in the world. And science is like something really into, and I've always been into space. Actually, speaking of which, I know Tara's also super into space, which you can see in her work. But fun fact, Augustus physically went to space in 2024, the actual plush toy, the AX3 space mission, which was amazing.
Say the name of the space mission again.
AX3 is a mission where Axiom Space is on SpaceX, so that is pretty crazy.
First ghost in space. First ghost in space. Woo! That's very cool. And so there's clearly, I believe with all three of you, your characters start with illustrations. You guys draw them first, and then they develop into three-dimensional form, which I think is a really big focus for CollectedCon, are the collectible designer toys. And so I would like to hear a little bit about your process as far as turning those characters, whether it's plush or vinyl, and how they develop that way.
Yeah, absolutely. That's also kind of just, I think, one of the coolest things about being a human, right? Like, is our ability to be able to plan something from art into like the development into a physical form, and what might be the best experience of that character, right? And like, you have to think of everything from like the ergonomics of it to, what's worth it to actually produce as a toy versus just as a pin or a staple. But everything kind of leads to like spreading, your art in some form that other people will enjoy. So production-wise, the act of carving out clay, right? That's like an experience that I enjoy, but I know that it also matters a lot to others to know that I put that level of care and effort and detail into something that they can now also participate in. So, yeah.
Awesome, thank you.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yeah, so as each of the characters, they begin as an illustration or a painting, and what the process is like for you taking those characters and having them become, whether it's plush or a vinyl or a sculptural toy.
Okay. Well, when I first started making toys, they ask for the turnarounds, and so you get the front, three-quarter, side, behind view. And the first toy company I worked with was Kid Robot, and back then they would actually submit them at wax with clay, and so we would go back and forth and receive pictures and make refinements, and it was all done by hand. And then slowly through the years, it would become digitized. It would be 3D programs. And, I really enjoy working with the sculptors both ways. But you can, see the pro side with 3D is that it's faster than doing 3D printouts. But there is also something really lovely with working with wax and getting that hand-done feel. So I do hope that a lot of sculptors do continue to work with their hands. But now, yeah, it's very digital, and so I make notes, I get the pictures, and what I like to do is just draw onto the pictures that I finish out with. Sometimes I'll have 2 layers. I'll have their picture, and then I'll duplicate that layer, and I'll draw right on top of it. And I just kind of use the shading, and it's pretty close, but just to get the idea. And I like to tell them to click the layer on and off, and then you can see the changes very easily, very quickly. So that's just something that I just worked out kind of myself to kind of go like here. Really, you can see the difference when you go back and forth. And I just write notes, just handwritten. Sometimes it's a big challenge. You just make it look like drawing. Make it look like a baby. And you can say it like 5 times, 5 different ways. And sometimes they just still don't get it. So that's one of the challenging things working with 3D sculpture is that communication and their translation about your art. But sometimes it's a breeze. Sometimes they just nail it. You're like, thank you.
Excellent, thank you, Tara. And Bao?
在我很小的时候，我就一直很喜欢玩玩具，所以就我很希望我的一些插画里的角色可以变成一个实体化的玩具，然后我可以带着它们出去。然后这个是我想把我的一些设计从2D 转成3D 的一个契机。
So since when I was a kid, I loved playing with these toys, and that's what inspired me to turn my painting into this 3D toy so that I can bring them with me when I go explore the world.
然后给到我一个最大的机会去把我的插画作品立体化的一个契机，就是在我大学的时候，我接触到了一个3D 雕刻的一门课程。就是这个课程有教我怎么去使用 ZBrush、3D、3D Max 这些软件，然后包括那时候在中国3D 打印的技术正在发展得很快，然后我就有机会去从一个插画的作品去用 ZBrush 把它做成一个3D 的模型，然后再把它打印出来，然后这个流程就会让我的这些作品的玩具化变得很顺畅。
So what started this journey is when I was in college, I took a 3D sculpture class, and then at the time, it's also when in China, the 3D printing technology is also developing. That's what gives me the ability to turn my 2D art into a 3D toy using those 3D technology.
Excellent, thank you. I also think maybe clearly you guys have each created your own world, your own characters, your own designs. Sometimes it's fun to talk about some of the biggest inspirations for you as you were starting to think about that yourself. Who were some of the world creators or character designers that inspired you as you started your career? Let's talk about that. You want to start, Mumbot?
Yeah, I can start with that. I mean, there are tons of inspiration I could list off. I was really into comic books, so I worked at comic store for many years, and Mobius is one of them. There are many. I don't want to go too far, but
Go ahead.
like in terms of toys, someone who's in the community is James Roman. He's one of them. Actually, Tara is one of them. It's a huge inspiration. I've been a fan of her work for years before anybody knew my name. So, yeah, I mean, but yeah, there's a lot for different mediums. Miyazaki's animations and Mononoke Hime, Princess Mononoke was like a huge inspiration to me. I still put it on just in the background when you come sometimes just for Nazca Valley of the Wind, if you haven't seen it. But he was also inspired by Mobius, if anyone didn't know that, which is pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool, thank you. Tara?
I kind of really got interested in character-based artwork when I got fired from the coffee shop at Borders Books and Music. And my friend and my friend worked at this Japanese anime store, and she's like, "Oh, we need help. Just come in and work for us." And I was like, "Okay, that sounds awesome." And so we sold anime, we sold toys, we sold comic books, Japanese comics, a huge variety of mix. We had a lot of, Dragon Ball and Sailor Moon, but there was also a lot of these independent toys from Medical. And so I was like, this stuff is so rad. And I was 20 years old at the time. And that really gave me the push into wanting to make my own world of characters and get into this character-based work. So it was like Mirasawa and Katsuya Tirana and Yoshitaka Amano And some of the animes that I was really into at the time were like Neon Genesis Evangelion. Of course, Miyazaki's Studio Ghibli was like Ghibli, and so cool, you know. And that really gave me, those were like my early inspiration. And also about comics, you know, more like the Vertigo, like independent indie stuff. Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. And about your early inspirations and characters that inspired you as you began the adventure?
就是像我刚刚说的，我小时候就很喜欢收集玩具，然后我很喜欢的一个类目是那种古董的玩偶，类似一个叫怪石头，它是就是一些比较中古的玩偶，然后包括日本战国时期的一些 soft figure。
Well, I was a toy collector since I was a kid, and so especially for those vintage toys from Japan, and America, apparently. So we're not quite sure what their original names are. We know their Chinese names, so I'm trying to figure that out. Sorry.
It's okay.
Cuban. I don't know if anybody knows Cuban toys.
The little,
Vintage Cuban toys.
the little babies?
Baby? Yeah, Cuban.
Cuban vintage toy.
Yeah. She's American. She's American. But they made it in Japan. Yes. Rose O'Neill is her name, the designer of Cuban.
Thank you for that. Excellent, thank you. So maybe take a moment, put that in mind, and talk about either a designer toy or a project that came up just recently, or a project you're working on that'll be coming out soon, and maybe just something more recent that you've been working on and something that you could promote. Would you like to keep it?
最近有一个最近和 Average 会有一个最新的一个 collaboration， 就是 Spider Baby with the Creepborn。
Abao is going to have a collaboration coming up with MVH. It's going to be a spider boy, spider baby, combined with creep room. I don't know if anybody knows about that. Are you excited about that?
That's new vinyl hardcore out in very cool. That's exciting. Thank you for sharing that, Tara. Something that came out.
I have a tattoo of a spider baby.
So cool.
Well, today is the release date of my bunny hybrid figure. Coming out with 3 tattooing. And that was a blast to work on, and I'm so thrilled that she's here. I made a painting of that character in that figure, like in 2013. Do you remember?
The first one for the Breeders poster, the Alzheimer's parties, it was even earlier than that. I want to say that was like 2009.
Maybe, yeah. So bunnies held my fascination. Throughout my life, I had a pet bunny when I was little, and I had Jupiter, the bunny, in my Brooklyn art studio, and made a character of him, and that's kind of living in there, you can see. And now I have 2 bunnies, Moonbeam and Luna. And I just think bunnies are cool, and so I love, playing with the size relationship of characters that, to think that a human could be riding a giant bunny. And yeah, I'm really so happy she's here.
Mumbot, Jake?
Oh, super. So I'm kind of in between four releases right now, but I just, at the beginning of this month, I had
We're down.
can you hear me? Hello. Okay. I had this successful Kickstarter that just ended. No, why can't I do this?
They're hard to
I'm holding it still. Okay, can you hear me? Yeah, so the Horus Floor will be out in the next couple of months. So I'm really excited about that. And I have some other secret releases coming soon that I can't talk about, but will hopefully be ready by towards the end of this year. Also, can I just really get nerdy since this is a character design panel? I want to just say something about Abao's choice of Rose O'Neill. So she was a character designer from like a long time ago. She's also like one of the first female self-made millionaires in the United States. She was one of the first people to figure out how to use her character IP and like launch it through she worked with a company for toy production in Germany and in Japan, and then also learned licensing. She started with paper dolls and went on to make toys, the mayonnaise that everyone knows. And she also gave away a lot of her money for cool charities and stuff. So I just wanted to say it because it's so cool, such a cool story. But yeah, also I have toys coming later this year.
Awesome, thank you for that.
Also, I don't think Strange Cat Toys did Lenny Rider figure.
Yeah, go Strange Cat.
Go Strange Cat.
And they helped put on CollectedCon, so huge shout to Corey and the team Strange Cat.
Thank you, Strange Cat.
Woo! Another thing I feel like a lot of the audience watching, whether they're here or on the internet at home, might be interested to hear is some advice. Any advice that you might give to the younger generation, or anyone who is trying to begin character designing and/or then that production of toys and collectible figures as well. So, would you like to start that, Jake?
Yeah, my advice is to find something that is like your favorite interest and base your character on that, because you'll get sick of it. And you can obviously play around with different designs. And then while you're playing with different friends, offering it in different ways to people to see how they react. And then from there, like if it's stickers, that's a really easy way. Ooh, someone really always picks this sticker. So that's the one that maybe you can develop even further. That's my advice to start.
Great, so like a way to kind of test the market with a more affordable, like a sticker. I think that's a wonderful advice. Thank you.
I made a painting a long time ago of David Bowie, and I love his music, and I thought it would be really cool to do a portrait, and I was trying to think of the title for the piece, and thinking about his blog and what he's done and how wild his, just everything that he's done. And I came up with experimentation is the key to individuality. And that's really stuck with me, and I think that kind of is a great guideline through any medium, any art form, anything. Just experiment, try new things, be wild, do weird shit, just have fun with it, and go. Who cares? Just try new things, experiment, be weird. One of the things I like to do is write, just kind of word association and brainstorming, with no drawing, no pressure, no nothing. Just words on paper and kind of just word association. Where does this lead you? This word makes me think of this, and this makes me think of this, and this, and this. And and you kind of have this chain and clumps of words, and then that gives me kind of inspiration for different ideas, and then what I can draw.
Wonderful, that's great, thank you. Abao?
我跟 Tara 的有点像，就是我会随身带一本小本子，或者说在手机的备忘录上面，就是我有什么突然的想法，会立刻给它用很草稿的形式给它画下来，然后画下来之后，我会尽所有的可能性去把它去变成一幅画，或者就是通过3D 的形式，或者去捏泥的形式去把它立体化出来。就是我尽可能的快速把我的想法转变成2D 的图像，或者3D 的形象。
So my approach is kind of similar to Tara. I also like bringing like a small notebook with me, or I will just take down my ideas on my phone, and then I will try to turn that into a 2D art, or put them into a 3D art with just a simple art craft, and then turn that idea from an idea to the actual things as soon as possible.
Excellent, thank you. I think that's really good advice all around. Oh gosh, I did it again. Why? Why? That's me. Something's wrong with those methods. Well, that was very nice. Thank you, guys. I want to ask again to the audience if there's anyone that has any questions. You can raise your hand, and I'll invite you to the front, and we can pass you the microphone. And if there isn't any questions from the audience, which is perfect, yes, come on up. Yeah. Thank you. You were in our audience on our last panel. Oh, I love it. Oh, good. Me too.
Also, what do I just?
Yeah, right here. You can ask the question.
I've been really wanting to know this because I know that like you talked about how they used to sculpt with the wax, right? Do you generally get to choose who you work with when it comes to sculpture? Because they're interpreting your art, and that's important because sometimes you go over and over again. And that might be really annoying. It's like, no, you don't get me. So do you get to choose sometimes who your sculptor is? Or do you try to?
Yeah, that is an excellent question, and no, I do not get to pick the sculptors. But this makes me think that I should.
Yes, 100%
Jane, Val?
Yeah, Abao exalts with the next level, right? It's a great idea to learn how to sculpt yourself. I'm turned into it.
Yeah, that's great. I want to learn how to do 3D sculpt. It's inspiring. Thank you. Because I feel like it would be so cool if I could just sculpt it myself. You know? But I
Learning 3D is easier for some people than others. I can sculpt by hand, but I'm still learning 3D. But I want to be on the Abao wave, and I want to start sculpting myself because I have worked with 3D artists who understand my style, and I don't have to give them context. They get it right away. And then I've worked with 3D sculptors who I'm like, oh my gosh, no, for like months.
Yeah. Pictures. Sometimes pictures. And you're like, God, yikes.
Abao, I'd love to hear from you on this. Yeah. Because you do all of your own sculpting, is that correct?
我最开始是全部是我自己，但是后来我也有一个新的工作流程，就是我会找3D 雕刻师去做前期的，他们可能做到70%，然后最后的30%我会自己来调整，然后这个调整的部分需要用到的3D 技术就会比较少，但是我会通过这最后的调整，让这个作品更像是我的作品。
So when I first started, I did it all by myself. But at this stage, I work with someone. I work with 3D artists to start the work. About 70% of the initial work were done by 3D artists. But then the last 30% of it, I will do it myself. I will craft the details, and there's not as technology, like 3D technology involved, so I can do it myself. But I get to craft the details easily.
Wonderful. Thank you. Great question. Is there anyone else out there that has any questions that they want to have answered before we wrap this up? You guys?
I have a question.
Okay, this is great. This happened in the last panel. Ask each other questions.
What programs do you recommend starting with to learn how to sculpt 3D sculpt?
ZBrush.
ZBrush.
ZBrush. You have any questions across the panel? I think this will be good.
I just wanted to maybe ask the audience, like, is there something that makes the audience, like for you guys who are paying attention, is there something that you feel like you would like to know more specifically from us, like about character design or how we're making things, and if anyone wants to just come up and say, like if we didn't cover something. Yay.
Oh man, like if you're working and you maybe phase that out, so you talked about like going for stickers or affordable things for these more popular characters. If you like, you know, will she put this in production or like if you're investing in a toy run?
Great question. So, how do you decide whether to fully commit and produce it, or whether or not it should just exist as a doodle?
You know, kind of what Jade said. Like, you know, if the sticker isn't selling well, or something that's, you know, less of an investment, you know, yeah, you have to pay attention to that. You know, but also, you can action. You're like, no, this character is awesome. I want to do it. You know, you do have to follow your instincts. But yeah, I mean, if it's something that doesn't resonate with people and they're not drawn to it, you don't relate to it, you have to take that into consideration.
I want to just add one more thing. Production notes. If the figure itself, let's say it's popular enough and people like it, but maybe timing is wrong, or like also maybe it would be too difficult to insert in formats. So that would be another thing to consider. Probably you want to think like, well, maybe it won't work in a vinyl, but it will work in a resin, or if it will be better as a plush. So that's another thing that comes into play.
About?
我觉得这就是一个很困难的事情，然后我自己其实也就是在想怎么去平衡这个，因为我出了很多玩具和 IP 形象，其实也有一些我自己很喜欢，但是公众可能接受度就是一般般，然后也有一些我自己觉得，它只是一个我很随手去创作出来的作品。然后结果可能大家都很喜欢，所以这个事情我觉得是没有办法预料。
So this is a balance that I'm constantly trying to strike as well. I also struggle with my decisions as well. There are some characters I created that I really love, but they are not received as well. But there are also characters that I just casually drawn and then produce, and everybody loves it. So I think this is something that we're still struggling with.
One of the things that I heard recently, which I really liked, on that same note, is investing in that character and continuing to invest in those characters. You know, Disney or Sanrio have had these same things where they've continued to invest in the characters, and that's what's kept them alive as well. It's like continuing, and maybe it's not that pose, or maybe it's not that position or that that format, produce it in, but it's continuing to invest in them and spending your time and energy investing in them so that they don't die. Because if you think about the characters that have gone away, it's because someone stopped investing in them, whether it was the artist themselves or who was helping produce it. And so it's hard to say to give up or to keep going, but the only way you know that they can stick around would be to continue to invest in them. And I don't mean just money, but I mean your creative input and your ideas and investing in that character as long as you can. And that's what would keep them alive. Or, you know, because it could just be another stick, and it could be just another crate, but you investing in that. And this isn't my panel, I'm sorry, I should stick to.
That's great advice. Yeah, 100%. And what you're saying, maybe it just needs a new form, or a new pose, or a new outfit, or a new, you know, something situational, something new.
For just to add to what you're saying, also to not let certain like negative feedback get you totally down, because of course not everyone's gonna like everything that you create. So with the fact that like yes, you can take some feedback, like you also said, you know, everyone kind of said like some things are important to you and you really enjoy it and you see the potential. You should really continue to push that. Like Agostus is my main character for a reason. There's a lot of reasons, but one reason I feel like it's very universal. It's not like there's nothing really gender or culturally that we can't all relate to. And then also, in addition to that, I've had a lot of negative actually over the years, and I've had people, you know, make fun of it over the years, and I just continued on, and hey, you know, it worked out. So
He's out of this world now, so.
yeah, literally.
Bao, would you like to share any thoughts on that?
我非常赞同刚刚你说的，就是，其实每一个角色在我看来，它就是我从设计它开始，我就会给它赋予一些故事，我会觉得它是可以一直陪伴着我的一些角色，所以我会，即使它不是以一个商品化的形式一直存在，它可能会在我的插画里面不断的出现，然后，我会觉得。我希望这个角色能一直存在，他的故事会一直的延续。
So every time when I create a character, whether they are created as a merchandise or just an art that I create, it always gives it a story. So whether it's gonna be something that I sell or not, it should always be there with me. And then even though they're not sold as a toy, sometimes they make appearances in my other works. So they are always there with me, and because they have a story with me.
I think that's exactly the point, is investing in them just by keeping them present, keeping them around. I think that's wonderful. Thank you. Wonderful question. Thank you. Has this inspired any other questions? Would anyone else like to come up? Anyone else want to ask each other any questions? Oh, cool. Then I think we can go maybe just, if there's any final thoughts, anything else you'd like to share?
I just want to thank everybody for being so amazing and hanging out with us and being interested in what we do, and also for supporting artists like all of us who we work very hard and we really appreciate the support. You guys are awesome! You're awesome!
Thank you. Wonderful line, wonderful line. Sorry, any final thoughts there?
Thank you so much for coming and supporting all the. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Round of applause. Thank you for joining us for the panel, our character design panel, and thank you CollectedCon. And we will see you guys again at 5 o'clock for resin and 3D printing. So thank you all. One more round of applause.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. If you want to get a picture of us.